And I thought, what on earth is he doing? He's just standing there. And so I got the stuff done. I walked over. I said, what are you doing? He goes, over there. Which one's the guy? And I said, what do you mean? And I looked up and there was this huge, it was like 15, 20 feet high. This big advertisement for perfume or something. I don't know, for something like that. And it was two people hugging each other. And I went, well, yeah, it's the one on the left. He's the guy. He goes, how do you know? I said, he's got an Adam's apple. That was the only way I could tell them apart. That's why they don't let us out of America very much. I mean, come on, guys. You know what that is? It's more than just fashion. It's the prince of the power of the age seeking to destroy the created order that God placed upon society. It's distortion of God's creation. Do you see that? When we work building buildings, we have nail guns. I don't know if you have them here. And boy, you can just pow, 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 go down through there. I see those guys with their pants hanging way down. I just want to take a nail gun. Bam! I can fix you. I can fix your pants. Or you see these, skinny jeans. You know what my wife says? She says this. She says, look how manly that boy looks in those skinny jeans, said no one ever. I mean, what is this? Did you get them wet, put them on so they stretched, and then blow dry them to make them fit your body? You're a guy. What are you doing? You know? You guys ought to do a lot more hunting here in Norway or something. I don't know. But it's all over. It's in my country too. It's like my wife says, if a man-eating lion got lost in America, it would starve to death because there are no men to eat. And I want to say, it's not just, look, we're not supposed to just try to look different by our clothing. No. But there's certain lines that you want to maintain. And that is, my wife always teaches, if you're a man, you should look like a man. If you're a woman, you should look like a woman. And then she says, if your clothing is a frame for your face, from where the glory of God is to shine, that's wonderful. If your clothing is a frame for your body, it's sensual and God hates it. That's a good rule. You see? We want to be imitators of Christ in that inward purity, in that inward order that God has placed upon creation will come out. Now you say, well, Brother Paul, what does it mean to imitate? Jesus, none of us walk as He walked perfectly. But again, He's talking about style of life. Let me give you an example. When I was a boy, I was raised on a farm. We raised cattle and horses. And when it would snow and get very cold like this, we'd have to break the ice, or we'd have to carry water out to the horses in big buckets. And so my dad, he was really big and strong, and he'd fill up one bucket and grab it this way, and another bucket and grab it, and he'd take off walking across the snow. Now, I was about 6 years old, and I'm out there. I want to be just like my dad. I fill up the bucket. I pick one up, pick the other one up. I'm so short, you have to pick them up like that. And I want to walk just like he walked. And I would want to put my foot in the same footprint in the snow that He did. I wanted to be like Him. Now, as I walked out through there, I looked like a drunken spider. I couldn't walk like He walked. But if you had watched me, there would have been no doubt in your mind that that little boy wanted to be exactly like his father. And that's the way you and I should be. Trying to imitate Jesus, people are going to laugh because we are not going to do it well all the time. But there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that He is our goal. He is the one we are desiring to imitate. Do you see that? So many people want to imitate soccer players and movie stars and rock stars and this and that. Let those people do that. But if you're a follower of Christ, you're to imitate Christ. And that imitation, again, especially to you young people, listen to me. That imitation is going to make its way outside. It really is. Now, let's go on. In verse 7, Beloved, I am not writing a new commandment to you, but an old commandment which you have had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you have heard. On the other hand, I am writing a new commandment to you, which is true in Him and in you, because the darkness is passing away, and the true light is already shining. The one who says he is in the light and yet hates his brother is in the darkness until now. The one who loves his brother abides in the light, and there is no cause for stumbling in him. But the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. Now, he says in verse 7, I'm not writing to you a new commandment, but an old one. And then in verse 8, he says, I am writing a new commandment to you. What does he mean? On the one hand, in one verse, I'm not writing a new commandment, I'm writing an old one. Then he says, I'm writing a new commandment. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the commandment of love. And what he's saying in a very powerful and beautiful way is this. First of all, this commandment to love is an old commandment. It's not new. It's been ever since the beginning. The law of God is immutable as God's character, and He says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, to love your neighbor as yourself. It's to love. It's always been. So it's an old commandment. But then He says it's a new commandment. In what way is it new? When Jesus Christ came, He raised the level of the definition to love. He gave us such a gigantic, such a powerful definition and illustration of love that it's almost as love had never been taught before. He raised the bar. In the law, love could be expressed in a tithe. In the New Testament, it could be expressed by selling everything you have and giving it to the poor. You see? Love was, do not be cruel to your enemy. Old Testament. New Testament, die for him. Jesus raised the bar. And love is the great mark of the Christian. Now, he says, love your brother. Here, when he says love your brother, he's not talking about someone from another race. He's not talking about someone, the poor or anything like that. First of all, there are no other races. I don't know if you ever knew that, but that's so wrong, that language. There aren't races. There is one race. It's human. They're all from Adam. There's just one of us. We look different. But there's just one of us, one human race. But he's not talking about loving the human race, even though we ought to, and in other places it commands us to. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about loving the poor, even though we should love the poor, and the Bible commands us to do it. Here he's talking specifically about loving another disciple of Jesus Christ. That possibly the greatest manifestation of being a Christian is that you want to be with other Christians and you want to serve them in love. My dear friend, if you want to be with the people of this world and do the things of the people of this world, it's because you are one of them. Now, of course, especially new believers and immature believers, there may be a particular draw from some area of the world, and that can happen, and you still be a Christian. You need to fight against it. But one of the things that we're going to see, if we are truly Christian, is a greater and greater liberation from the things of the world and a greater and greater desire to love God's people in the context of the church, to love a community. Now, this is one of the reasons why a local church is so important. Someone came to me one time, a young guy, and he goes, "Man, I want to be a missionary to China." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I just love the Chinese. I love the Chinese. I love the Chinese more than... I just love the Chinese." And I looked at him and I said, "Do you know why you love the Chinese so much?" He said, "No, why?" I said, "Because you don't know anybody from China." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I know a lot of people from China and I love them. But my whole point is, it's really easy to love someone who's 10,000 miles away. You can say all day, 'I love the church, I love the church.' But if you're not in a church, loving the people in that church, what are you doing? Loving people in not just some temporary relationship like a conference. Like right now, you've gone to this conference and you've said, "Man, I met all these people and everyone was wonderful." Yeah, but if we stayed together for about another month, we all wouldn't look so wonderful, I guarantee you. We would look a lot like the people back home. Do you see that? It's loving our brothers and sisters in Christ, and this is extremely important. It's one of the great characteristics of being a genuine believer. Now, I want you to hold your place in 1 John, and I want you to go to a passage. I'm going to teach you something about Bible interpretation, but also teach you something about this truth of loving one another. Go to Matthew chapter 25. And in verse 31, we have the separation of the sheep and the goats. Okay? Very important text. It's the judgment day, and it's the separation of the nations, the separation of the sheep and the goats. And you've all read this, I hope. It says in verse 33, "He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?' The king will answer and say to them, 'Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me.' And then he'll look at the goats and he'll say, 'You didn't.'" Now, when you've heard this verse before, these verses, it's usually in the context of defending a ministry to the poor, or a prison ministry, or a clothing ministry. And people will say, "That's what the Bible teaches this. If we're truly Christians, we're going to go into prisons, we're going to evangelize, we're going to help the poor, we're going to feed the hungry and clothe the naked." Well, we need to do that. And there are other places in the Bible that say we need to do it, but that's not what this passage is talking about. Be very careful. You can't pull a passage out of its context. Do you see that? That's what people do. Jesus is not saying, "I was a pedophile in prison and you came and visited me." He's not saying, "I was a serial killer in prison and you visited me." That's not what he's saying. He said, in the way that you did it to the least of these, my brethren, my brothers. Now, we need to have prison ministries, and we need to feed the poor and clothe those who are naked. Yes, whether they're believers or not. But the point that he's making here is this, that the genuine Christian is the one who loves other Christians even when it's costly. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that we're all a church in Rome, and 2nd century, and we're all outlaws for meeting together in the name of Jesus. And we're all meeting out in this dark forest at night outside of Rome. And at about 11 o'clock at night, we finish our service, and we all have different ways in which we make it back into the city so nobody sees us. Well, you go to bed, you make it home, and you go to bed, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, someone's pounding on your door. And you open up the door, and it's one of the church members. And the church member says, "Quick, get up, get up. Something terrible's happened." "What's happened?" "We got to go back out to our meeting place." So you go out there to the meeting place, and everyone's upset. You say, "What's happened?" "Two of our dear members, when they were going back, they were caught by the Romans, and they were thrown in prison." Now, at that time, as in many places still in the world, if someone from the outside does not bring you clothing and water and food, you're going to die. They don't provide it for you in the prison. Okay? So, we all come together and we say, we have to do something. So 2 young guys, in the church, very zealous, they jump up and they say, "We'll go. We'll take them whatever they need." And then an old brother gets up and he says, "Thank you, young men, but sit down. You don't understand. Whoever takes food, water, clothing to these brothers of ours in prison that are now naked and beaten, dehydrated and starving, whoever does that, there's a really good chance the Romans are going to identify you as also believers, and you're going to get thrown into the same prison." And then he begins to explain some things. And finally, there's some people in the church, about 10 people. And they look really angry. And they just jump up and they go, "You know what? We're sick of this. We came to this church and we're followers of Jesus, but you people more and more are getting fanatical. There is no way Jesus would want us to go over there. It's hopeless. Whoever goes is going to be arrested. You people have just lost your mind. As a matter of fact, we're out of here. Forget it." And they leave. And then 2 brothers, older men, in the back stand up and say, "Look, we so appreciate you, young men, but you've got your life ahead of you. And you're going to be married in a few months. Look, we're old. Our children are grown. Let us go. We'll take everything." So the members pray over them, and then they all go back to their house, and they bring clothing and water and food and bandages and everything else. And the old men, they leave and go to the prison, risking their life. And what have we seen? A division of the sheep and the goats. The goats got mad, said, "We're out of here. There's no way." The sheep said, "We're going." And that's what it means. That's what it means. And that's what it means to love. Now, you may not be in a place where you're persecuted at the moment, but let me